Bro. I believe I could be better than I used to be. Until then, I just won't stop.
Everyone does that. That's not a guy thing. When you feel attacked like that.
Every time I hear those motherfuckers on NPR talk, like I want to give them a noogie on principle.
Brome with Ben and Joe.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Brome. Hopefully, you guys are settling into the new year right now. A month has gone by, and we're just starting to get a picture of what's ahead. We've avoided World War III for now. There's a deadly virus spreading throughout the world. It's election year. The economy is skyrocketing. And yet many of us feel like it's left us in the dust. We're trying to strike the balance between work and family, career passions and personal passions, and figure out our place in the social and professional world. All this back and forth, with seemingly no time on our hands, can make us feel stressed out. Crazy, even. So today, I wanted to touch on some of the things that have been happening lately and just dive a little deeper into mental health in general. You're getting just me today. Joe is on a little break, and so I hope you guys still enjoy it. You hope enjoy my voice, my weird monotone, sleepy voice. Maybe drink some coffee while you listen to this one. Before we get started, I want to give a shout out to Kobe Bryant. His death was one of the biggest celebrity deaths, I think, of most of the people who's listening to this lifetime. And regardless of how you feel about him, his death has impacted millions of people across the world. It totally came out of left field, and we're still feeling the social effects of it today, 1 week later. So as you guys probably know at this point, I have been the most politically aware and active, actually, I've been in my entire life. I'm a huge fan of Andrew Yang. Sorry, Joe. Yes, I'm bringing him up again. I know it's annoying. I'm sorry if you guys are sick of it too. But it's led me to be more kind of aware of news organizations. And I know that we've all been aware that news organizations have been slipping for a while. It seems to go in line with data collection and Cambridge Analytica for some reason. I don't know why. There just seems to be some tie there where information in general is becoming less and less trustworthy now that there's just so much of it. People in power are still trying to have control over what information we get as people, and their grip seems to be slipping, and maybe they're getting desperate. I don't really know what's going on. You know, I feel like I kind of sound like a conspiracy theorist, but obviously there's issues with how we get our information and how much we can trust it. And I just think it's so funny because if you search, I just Googled current news, and the first 4 sites that come up are CNN, Fox News, NBC, and NPR. And I have had huge issues with all of those news sources lately, and it bugs me that those are the first 4. But like, what else do we have at this point? The things that to me are more trustworthy are harder to find. Like The Economist. The Economist, I think, is actually a pretty good news source. BBC is pretty good. You can find at least somewhat objective stuff in these places, and there's plenty of other ones too. But it's the fact that they're low on the page is discouraging. And maybe I'm crazy. This would be a great thing for you guys to point out to me if you guys think that I'm crazy for not liking those news sources. But it just bugs the crap out of me that they're at the top of the list. For those of you that wonder what I'm talking about, let's say you just want to know what's going on in the world today. And so that's why you Googled current news. First thing that comes up is CNN, at least for me. I don't know if everyone's going to get the same results as me, but I never use CNN, so the fact that it comes up first is interesting. Click on CNN. First thing that comes up, emails confirm president's role in aid freeze. Okay, how much of the news has been about the impeachment? A lot. So that's the first thing that comes up is more impeachment stuff, which again, it's just like, do we need to know every single teeny little detail of the trial more than we need to know everything else that's going on in the planet? I don't think so. I think the outcome of the trial is more interesting. It's more important than anything else. The information definitely should be available for all of us to dive into. I definitely think it's important for journalists to be covering that, but I don't know if it's more important than everything else, especially when everyone kind of knows how it's going to turn out. He's not going to lose his presidency over this. And if he does, you guys can call me out and say I was completely wrong, but I can't see it. And I haven't even seen anyone suggest that. So why are we hearing about it all the time? You pull up Fox News, it's exactly the same thing. Top story, Pelosi and these top Dem candidates rip into Trump over travel ban expansion. I you know what you're getting when you open the news before you get it. And that seems to me counterintuitive to what the news is supposed to be. I'm supposed to be learning something, not just kind of getting what I expect. So let's say I scroll past the Trump stuff, the Pelosi stuff, the impeachment stuff. Next thing is just buzz. More than half, if not almost all, of the of the stories on CNN after that are about celebrities. I don't feel like the news should be that celebrity heavy. Sure, there should be a section of the news that's entertainment, but I don't need to know about Grimes, about SNL, about the NFL, about Kobe Bryant's wife, about Elton John, Elon Musk. Elon Musk and Grimes, LeBron James, all in that time, and then sensational videos after that. That's the next thing. So I think we could all benefit from a major shift in focus of what the news is. I mean, clearly that's one of the main reasons that podcasts are popular. Obviously, podcasts like to focus on the sensational too, and they like to focus on stories and making people happy and stuff. But a lot of us, including I think most of the listeners here, and obviously because most of you came from TimeSuck, and TimeSuck is about learning, a lot of the listeners here come here because they want to learn. And one of the reasons that I'm so passionate about doing this show, and I think Joe is so passionate about doing this show, is because it's conducive to learning, and it forces us to learn, and it forces us to be part of a learning experience. And learning new information is so important, and I think it's going to become more and more important as we continue to grow as a society. All right, that's enough of my ranting. And sorry, Joe, if you don't approve. Well, no, he approves. He doesn't care. He never cares what I do. But yeah, let's talk about mental health and how to figure out if you're really crazy, and how to help people if they're struggling, and how to help yourself if you're struggling. So, what is mental health? What is mental illness? Most scientists believe that mental illness is caused by a lack of communication between neurons in the brain. This is where the term neurotransmission comes from. But what does this really mean? Well, it means that nobody knows exactly why mental illness is caused, but humans can point to a biological process that is correlated with some mental disorders. So, how do you know if you're crazy? Find out by listening to my highly unqualified opinion on this episode of Brome. How does a person know if they're crazy? I want to tell you a story. Let's say there's a 38-year-old male named Jack who works as a director of marketing for an outdoor athletic apparel company in Portland, Oregon. Jack has a wife and daughter, a 2018 GLA class Mercedes-Benz, and a mid-sized house in northwest Portland. He's a diehard fan of the Portland Trailblazers. Every October, people dread the inevitable phrase Jack feels compelled to utter: "This is our year." Year after year, the Blazers fail to make it to the NBA Finals. Jack starts watching every single game. "I'm not supportive enough. If I were a better fan, the team would do better." He begins to put family matters on hold. Daughter's baseball game? I'll see the next one. Daughter's softball game? Same thing, nothing new. He shows up to work late, inexplicably sweaty. "It's not sweat," he says. "I've just been eating really bad, like fries and pizza and..." But his voice trails off, eyes on the morning game. "What are you doing here?" his boss asks. "It's Sunday." "I was just coming in to make up for last time." "Is it really Sunday?" Jack asks himself. Around Jack, the economy's not going so well. People are losing their homes, their jobs, defaulting on debt, ending up with nowhere to go, nothing to eat. Looting becomes a regular occurrence. Jack's daughter, a little miffed about his absence, begins becoming concerned. Why was her dad putting all his focus on a game? She began to follow him to see if she could find more clues to his odd behavior. More and more, the town becomes enamored with the team. Sure, the economy's falling apart, but what can they do about it? A phone with YouTube TV costs less than rent. But Jack, he had to take everything one step further. He got a tattoo with the Blazers logo that read NBA Champs 2017, but they didn't win. He had the 7 removed and replaced with an 8, but still, they didn't win. The next year, his wife was pregnant with another daughter. Despite her mother's best efforts, the child was legally named Chief, after the nickname of former Trailblazer guard Al-Farouq Aminu. One day, Jack sat on his couch wearing his lucky underwear that he hadn't washed in 3 years. His daughter walked in. "I've been following you," she said. "Huh?" Jack muttered, eyes glued to the television. "I think you need some help." Jack's wife overheard and came in the room holding their new baby. "She's right, Jack." "Huh?" His wife turns off the television. Suddenly, Jack flies into a rage. Luckily, his daughter had called the local mental hospital. The doctors busted in and took him away. "Don't worry, ma'am. We'll fix him right up." As they walked Jack out of the house, something came over him. He realized the error of his ways. "Oh my God," he muttered. "I am crazy. I've completely lost it." "Wait," his wife yelled. She ran over to Jack. "What? Say that again." "I'm so sorry, Deborah," Jack began to cry. "I'll never buy a GLA class again." "Oh, Jack." Deborah threw her arms around Jack. The doctor shrugged and left. Sometimes it really takes you hitting rock bottom to realize that you've lost your mind. So, are you really crazy? Hey, statistics show if you're not crazy now, you very well might be at some point in your life. According to mentalhealthfirstaid.org, almost half of all adults have a mental illness at some point in their lifetime. Then again, if they said most people were crazy, then they couldn't call it crazy anymore. Could they? Wouldn't they just have to call it normal? In any one year, about 19% of adults will experience a mental illness. That's almost 1/5 of the population. It's higher among women than men, but many people in the field wonder if that's due to men underreporting. People under the age of 25 have a higher percentage, though that seems hard to categorize considering our brains don't fully develop until we're about 25 or so. Frontal lobe development takes a while. There's also so much bullshit these days, and people under 25 have less direction and more distractions than ever. They're seeing our generation all be underemployed, and what do they have to keep them on track? Hopefully a good community, because there's too many ways to be led astray at this point. Or maybe I'm just talking about myself and how much I go on Reddit. People over the age of 50 have much lower rates. Maybe that's because they just don't have time to care. Maybe their insecurities have begun to fade away. We talked about the happiness curve in the Getting Older episode. Maybe there's a connection there. Maybe we get happier because we have less mental illness. Or maybe we have less mental illness because we're happier. Or maybe, and this is my guess, there's an external third factor affecting both of these things. Changing what it is you care about. Once you have a grip on how to consistently make a living and build meaningful relationships, you kind of just do what you have to do to maintain those two things. And I guess your health too, hopefully. It's important to remember that most of these mental illnesses are mood disorders. That means depression, anxiety, bipolar, things where your mood fluctuates or swings far enough in one direction that it's affecting your life in a negative way. Not necessarily the Hollywood diseases like schizophrenia and dissociative identity disorder, formerly known as multiple personality disorder. I honestly forgot where I got this information. Some website that seemed legit, I think. Probably a nationally accredited one. But since I don't have it, you guys are just going to have to trust me on this one. But I read that if doctors are trying to determine if you are actually mentally ill, they have a list of criteria. In general, when doctors are trying to figure out if you have a mental disorder, they have a list of criteria. You have to hit a certain number of this criteria. Say, for example, there's 7 criteria. You have to hit like 5 of them at a level that is affecting your life for them to say that you have the disorder. But for a more generalized list, if you have the following symptoms and they are affecting your life, it could be because of a mental disorder. And not just a couple of these, like if you have most of these. Sleep or appetite changes, mood changes, withdrawal, drop in functioning, problems thinking, increased sensitivity, like heightened sensitivity to sight, sound, smells, touch, apathy, feeling disconnected, which to me seems, those two things almost seem like the same, illogical thinking, nervousness, or unusual behavior. Feeling crazy sucks. And I wonder why we don't take mental health problems as seriously as physical ones. And I think people that live close to mental health issues start to wonder the same thing. I wonder if it's because they're harder to see. We have so many immediate fixes to our problems right now, a lot of which don't actually work, but some do, that we expect to have an immediate fix for everything. I mean, fuck, my car and my computer broke in the same week, and I was able to solve both problems within a matter of days. I think a lot of us feel, especially men, like we should be able to do that with our own brains. I remember the last time I was having serious emotional issues, specifically saying, I feel like there's a simple thing I could do that would just fix what is going on, like a medicine or something. Now, obviously medicines exist, but there wasn't really one for what I was going through, and often medicines are meant to be temporary, not permanent. But the fact that I felt that way kind of left me stunned. I made a lot of small, slow changes that have been much better since, but part of me still wonders if there was some specific thing I could have changed to actually make myself better in a matter of days. Some part of me still believes that. Maybe there is, maybe there isn't, but either way, feeling crazy and knowing your brain isn't working the way it should, that sucks. If you do have mental health issues, remember that medication and therapy are not your only options. If these things truly genuinely work for you, that's great and you should lean into that. But with these things, it can often be really difficult to tell if they are helping and how much they are helping. There are also downsides to medications and therapy, like side effects and how inconsistent it can be, how long it takes, and how expensive it is. I don't know what's best for anybody, and I'm not trying to give any kind of medical advice here at all, but I am pointing out that the help that exists goes far beyond those two methods. Sometimes just vocalizing your problem can help a lot. With any problem, the more people you tell, the better. Many mental health problem, the more people you tell, the better chance you have of finding a solution. Social connection is also huge. We've talked about the benefits of social connection on here a lot, and also about how that's not all you need. Alone time is good too. And I think a person who, in my opinion, is mentally healthy is someone that is successful at both of those areas of life, the lone parts and the social parts. But I always think we can dive a little deeper into social connection to help improve your mental state. Face-to-face connections are huge. Connection in general is largely nonverbal. So when we keep it to just behind a computer screen or one way, like listening to this podcast, we're missing out on most of what benefits communication can provide us. Joining groups helps a lot as well. I think it's really important to have different levels of social connection. You want access to both one-on-one interactions and group interactions. They provide different levels of intimacy and attention, both of which can help relieve stress. Sometimes you really need the level of attention and listening that a one-on-one interaction provides. Other times, you want to feel the pressure taken off of you, and being part of a group can really help with that, especially if it's a low-pressure group, like one that gets together purely to do a mutually enjoyable activity like a game or comedy. Another way to help you with your mental health is to take care of your physical body. Anytime I feel like I'm losing it, I always start to get back on track if I start exercising. It doesn't matter what exercise I do as long as I'm exercising. And change up your exercises. You don't want to get stuck in the same routine. Change is good for the brain and the body. It's good stress, in my opinion. Speaking of stress, keep your stress levels in check. You can't just bust your own ass all the time. The cycle can be relentless. We feel inadequate, so we work harder, which burns us out, which leads us to unhealthy habits, which leads to us feeling inadequate. The cycle is harder to break because there's more than two steps to it. It's not just, I ate too much because I'm depressed, and I'm depressed because I ate too much. I think there's a little more to it. That cycle, because it's two-way, would be a lot easier to recognize and actually stop. Any moment I have where I actually realize that I'm losing my mind a little bit, I appreciate those moments because it's such a source of clarity, even if it's terrifying. I don't think we have to be severely mentally ill to have these moments. I think we've all had them. Maybe it comes to you when you realize you've been unreasonably judgmental over a group or a belief system for too long. Maybe it comes when you realize you were wrong about something that you were so sure you were right about. I've been in both these positions before. As a mostly liberal person, these things can be incredibly hard to admit, and even harder to acknowledge the work that needs to be done to remedy these things rather than ignoring them or feeling badly about yourself. Nobody should be made to feel bad about themselves. That doesn't mean that we don't feel pain when we realize we've been making a mistake for a long time. It just means we don't actively judge ourselves because of that mistake. Sometimes people have gone through war or other major trauma that leaves them feeling like shit. In these cases, rates of mental illness more than double. Sometimes people are going through a rough time. Generally, if you actually have a lot of unfortunate events happening in your life and you feel really sad for a few months following these events, that's not really considered clinical depression. That's considered being a normal human being who gets affected by their life circumstances. The key with this is the amount of time you're being affected by these events. The worse the event, the longer it's going to take you to get over it. And I think that's why more clinicians feel comfortable diagnosing veterans, because maybe war takes so long to get over that at a point something needs to get done about it. Don't be afraid to talk to somebody if you're feeling crazy. It's an unfortunate circumstance, but one almost anyone, especially our age, can understand. Suicide is the leading cause of death for people aged 15 to 29 worldwide. Please don't be afraid to reach out. If you know someone struggling, lend them a hand. If you don't know how, just start by being a non-judgmental listening ear. If somebody's that distraught by something and you can't understand why, remember the empathy episode we just did. You can't know exactly how somebody feels or whether or not they should be feeling that way. I want to mention something I just learned about in school. Some of you guys may have heard of the Stanford Prison Experiment. If you haven't, I'll preface this by giving you the story. The Stanford Prison Experiment was an experiment in social psychology conducted in 1971 by psychology professor Philip Zimbardo, a celebrity in the industry. The experiment was an attempt to find out the psychological effects of being in a role of perceived power. They used a method of gathering participants to act as either prison guards or prisoners. Zimbardo was a professor at Stanford University, where the study was conducted. The plan was to have the experiment go on for a couple of weeks, but it was cut short after 6 days. The participants were assigned either prisoner or prison guard by a coin flip and played out these roles in a mock prison. Zimbardo himself acted as warden of the prison, and if you know anything about psychological studies, that's a huge no-no right there. An observer can hardly remain impartial when they themselves are part of the experiment. Quickly after the experiment began, the guards became authoritarian and eventually subjected the prisoners to abuse and psychological torture, forcing them to eat dirty, rotten food, taking away their toilets, their blankets, and forcing them to commit embarrassing acts. They even had a solitary confinement, which they used to break the prisoners apart and turn them against each other. The research was funded by the U.S. Office of Naval Research, as they were trying to figure out why guards and prisoners in the Navy and Marine Corps had difficulties. Naturally, much of the findings from the experiment were questioned by peers. The reason that it was cut short after 6 days was because Zimbardo finally realized, after hearing from his graduate student who he was dating, that what he was doing was terrible. It took a woman he was sleeping with to point out how he was basically facilitating torture for him to realize what he was doing and pull himself out of the role that he himself was playing. Naturally, it was criticized for many reasons, including its unscientific methodology. Other versions of similar experiments performed by different researchers since the publishing of the study have not replicated the same results. Zimbardo concluded that the role of prison guard alone causes abusive behavior, rather than a person in that role having, say, the personality traits of an abuser. Despite criticism, this experiment became extremely famous and has been turned into at least 2 fictional movies and been alluded to in other fictional works. So, that's the backstory. What we learned in class was that in, I think, 2018, an audio recording surfaced of one of the experimenters talking to one of the participants who was assigned to be a guard. This guard didn't really participate in any of the abuse. During the conversation, the experimenter coaxed the guard, asking him why he wasn't participating and suggesting that the prisoners deserved to be treated poorly. This information blew my mind. Me and a lot of other psychology students had been led to believe that, despite the study's flaws, it showed that simply believing you had the power to inflict pain on others would lead you to do so. But now we can see that the guards were heavily influenced to do harm to the prisoners. Maybe some of you knew this, maybe it means nothing to you, but as somebody who learned about the study over and over again, this finding was huge news to me. And I know that, I probably should have thrown it out a long time ago based on how unscientific it was for so many reasons. But I think the fact that they were literally coaxing them implies that there was some level of dishonesty with the study, and that is a huge deal in the industry. All right, we're going to take a quick break here, and when we come back, I'm going to talk a little bit about my own mental health experiences and how, in my opinion, I think you can help yourself and how you can help others who you think to be struggling. So I want to talk about myself a little bit. I have gone through plenty of mental health struggles myself, all mood disorders. I have been questioned as bipolar. I've been told I'm ADHD. I've gone to the therapist for depression and for anxiety. And, I think that these are honestly all things that most people are going to experience on some level, even if it doesn't get to a clinical level. And I think one thing that doesn't get talked about enough, I know we always talk about how saying be positive doesn't really help, but having fun and taking things more lightly and chilling out, I think are just so ridiculously important. And we chastise people for doing it too much, obviously, because you can't do too much of anything, you gotta have a balanced life. But that can really shake you out of a really bad place when it's what you need. And it's something that I forget to do all the time. And there's so many ways to do it. I mean, we go to these defaults of just like of playing video games and watching TV and drinking and stuff like that. Stuff we know isn't really great for us. But if we stop looking at those as these like kind of forms of sustenance that end up making us feeling empty and just think about in general relaxing. I mean, you're not really relaxing if you're going to the same sources of pleasure over and over and over again, because you've gotten into this cycle, and the cycle is just like, you work and then you go do these things that you're so used to doing. I think when you're really chilling is when you're actually taking a break from the cycle. You're taking a break from what you're used to. You're just taking a break from the structure that you have set up in your mind, and you're going with the flow about stuff. So that can mean just deciding, that you're not going to go to school today. It's a lot easier to do that with school than work, which is why I said school. Or deciding that you want to make some new friends, not because you don't like your current friends, but because you're just looking for something else to do. Or deciding to go on a trip that you wouldn't normally take, doing an activity you wouldn't normally do, or just checking the fuck out and staring off into space for a little while. I really think that is a healthier thing than we give it credit for. I know that when I was making a lot of major changes in my life, I spent a lot of time just going on long walks, like 3-hour long walks. Part of that was because I didn't really have much else to do. I was living in the middle of the city, but it was Portland, and Portland is just like service industry central, and I'm not trying to get drunk and just eat all of the time. Like, I'm not trying to just consume. And that's, if nighttime in Portland, you have a few ways to consume, and that's about all you have to do. So what I did was I would go on these long walks. These walks gave me time to just not really worry about anything for a very long time. I felt like this interesting sense of freedom by being able to just kind of wander wherever I wanted to go. And it wasn't like I was going crazy far. The worst thing I would do is I'd walk too far in one single direction. And then once I started walking back, be like, oh crap, I don't want to walk this far back. So I'd usually do something to kind of prevent that. But it became literally my favorite activity for a while. And I ran into the same problem that you run into everything, where, it started to become my go-to, and like the fact that it was my go-to made it kind of lose its magic, because it wasn't so new anymore. I had already kind of explored the city and the neighborhoods around me about as much as I could have. And, I started looking for something else, but it did give me a much clearer view of myself in a lot of ways. And I've spent a lot of time discovering myself since then, but it gave me time to discover myself and figure out at least some of the things that I knew I did want. And I just think taking that kind of break, that kind of breaking out of your patterns and what you're used to is just so important, especially when you're not doing well. I really think when people aren't feeling well and they're having mental breakdowns, it's because there's something they're not letting go of. There's some pattern that they can't break out of. I know that that's at least been my experience. And, if you look at people with addictions, that's one of the hallmarks of it is being stuck in a cycle. And also people with mental illnesses. Sometimes the kinds of thoughts you have themselves, at least in my opinion, are types of addictions. Again, I got to preface this by saying in my opinion, because I am not a mental health professional, but I have spent many, many years thinking about this stuff, and I just kind of wanted to put that out there for people in case it helps at all. If you know somebody who is or who you think is going through a mental illness, there are ways that you can try to help. For many people, talking about their mental illness is one of the most helpful things. If you think talking to them about it might help, mentalhealth.org has some suggestions on how to approach the topic. First of all, make sure you are giving them your complete undivided attention. It can be really incredibly disheartening when you try to open up to somebody about a sensitive subject you're struggling with and they don't seem to be focused on you at that moment. Make sure the space you're giving them is a non-judgmental space. Let them share as little or as much as they want to share. You might need to initiate the discussion, but do your best to allow them to lead it and set the pace. Putting pressure on them can backfire and cause them to shut down. It's not really a pleasant thing to have somebody do that to you when you're having trouble discussing these things in the first place. It's also hard for the person trying to help. It can be scary and require trust and courage on your part. You don't know if they've talked about it to anybody else, or if you're the first person. You're also not a medical expert. The best way to approach this, given these facts, is to try not to make assumptions about exactly what's going on with them. And that includes jumping to conclusions, even if you think you have the solution. Do your best to ask open-ended questions that give them room to steer the conversation to things that are really on their mind, rather than supporting the narrative you may inadvertently be creating. Really listen intently to their words and what's behind them. Try repeating back what they say, in their words or in your own, to make sure you understand how they're feeling, and show them that you're respecting their feelings. If you think they'll be responsive to it, offer to help them find aid, whether it's professional help or just opening up to a third party like a friend or a family member. Just be sure not to try taking control of the situation. I personally struggle with all of these things when I'm trying to help someone else. Even experts and trained professionals make mistakes when it comes to doing these things, so don't get down on yourself. It's hard. It might very well be super difficult, but the reason we do it is because whatever our friend or loved one is going through is probably much more difficult than the effort it takes for us to try and help them. If you think they may be at crisis level, concentrate on their immediate needs at the moment. Literally ask them what would help right now. Do what you can to avoid being confrontational. Offer to contact anybody they feel they might need to contact in that moment. Encourage them to seek appropriate help, and if they've been harmed or have harmed themselves, make sure to get them first aid. If you are experiencing mental health problems and are looking for resources to reach out, let me suggest a few that I've found. The Substance Abuse and Mental Health Service Association has a national helpline at 1-800-622-HELP or 1-800-622-4357. You can call any hour of the day, any day of the year, for referrals to local treatment facilities and support groups. The line is open to people suffering from substance abuse or mental disorders, as well as family members affected by this or who want to seek help for their loved ones. The National Suicide Prevention Hotline is available at 1-800-273-TALK. The top helpline resources from the National Alliance on Mental Illness include the Anxiety and Depression Association of America, which you can call at 240-485-1001. The Children and Adults with Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder, or CHADD, at 800-233-4050. The Depression and Bipolar Support Alliance at 800-826-3632. The International OCD Foundation at 617-973-5801. The National Center of Excellence for Eating Disorders at 800-931-2237. The Schizophrenia and Related Disorders Alliance of America at 240-423-9432. The Sidran Institute, which helps with trauma and dissociation, at 410-825-8888. The Treatment and Research Advancements for Borderline Personality Disorder at 888-482-7227. If you live in Oregon like me, 4D Recovery is a great recovery community for adults aged 18 to 35. If you ever listened to Hump Day Heroes, you might have heard the episode we did where we interviewed Tony Vesna, one of the main people at 4D. we have a very, very overdue update from our Brome listener who is a student in Russia. He's back in America, and he wrote to us saying, "Hey, it's me, Kai, the kid who was studying in Russia. I am now back in the States and have moved in with my parents as I'm currently unemployed, but I've been applying to jobs like a coked-out orangutan. And I haven't been back a week yet. I want to extend my thank you to the show, as it did help me even before I went to Russia, realizing that a lot of what I've been feeling is normal, and also figuring out when things are that I feel are not quote-unquote normal, and that I should probably talk to a therapist. As I've stated before, I always look forward to every Monday morning when I get the podcast notification that there is a new episode to listen to. Having that part of my schedule actually gives me motivation to follow through on some of the words and wisdoms of you two dudes talking to a microphone. I can't do it all, but it's good to have bits and pieces here and there to work with. Thanks for the free self-help and entertainment. I look forward to many more episodes. P.S. West Coast Buds throwback was really funny, and I got a couple weird looks on my airplane during travel back to the States. Thanks, Kai. It's a really sweet email. We really like it. I ended up continuing the conversation with Kai after he wrote this email and kind of asking about like what jobs he was applying to and all that. I assumed something to do with Russian since he was in Russia. And he wrote back that he was, he's applying to basically, jobs that had to do with Russian language and translation and stuff like that. And the fact Kai, you just graduated. I'm saying that I think I said this to him, but I want to say it to everyone. You just graduated, and the fact that you're trying so hard right off the bat is great. I mean, that's kind of what you got to do. Don't be discouraged if it takes you a while to get a job. I don't really know anything about the foreign language industry, but a lot of people have a lot of trouble getting jobs right out of college. I mean, the underemployment is a very serious thing right now. So the fact that you're trying, and living with your parents, you should live with your parents right after college, especially if you don't have a job. But even if you do have a job, because you just don't know how it's going to go, and they're probably not going to pay you that well anyways. So I think everything you're doing is right on track. And if anyone else out there is in a similar boat as him, fully support you. Like, just do what you got to do. I mean, there's people I know people older than me who live at home, and it's not because they're lazy and they don't work and they're pieces of shit or anything like that at all. It's just that they don't have a problem living at home. Their parents don't have a problem with them living there, and they're saving a bunch of money and resources, and they're saving resources for everyone else too. So I personally think that is nothing to feel weird about, and I strongly encourage it. Keep doing what you're doing. We're proud of you. Thank you for writing in. And everyone else who's writing in, we appreciate you guys so much. One other thing, I do get emails sometimes from people who ask, can we do an episode on this or that? And a lot of times it's stuff that we've already covered. So if we've already covered something and you don't feel like we dove into it deep enough, or you want to hear more about it, that's totally fine. Please let us know that. And if you could make that distinction, that would be super helpful, so that I know, like, okay, they already listened to this episode. It wasn't enough. It didn't answer the questions that they wanted answered. And we'll do our best, because we're not really experts in anything. We just know some stuff about a lot of random stuff, and we try to do our best. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. I hope this was an interesting episode. If you have any other questions, I mean, mental health is something that I wouldn't call myself an expert in, but I do have a vast amount of random knowledge in, and I've had more formal education on this subject by far than any other subject. Again, not a psychologist, don't even have a bachelor's degree, not giving any medical advice or anything like that. But at the very least, I might be able to point you in the direction of other resources than the ones that I mentioned on this episode. Please just reach out. Just do what you can to reach out. If you know someone who's not doing good, reach out to them and do everything you can. And I don't know what else to say, you guys. This was kind of an intense episode. There's a lot to take in from it, and I just appreciate you guys sticking around to the end. So everyone have a great week, and we will see you guys next time. Peace.
I believe I could be better than I used to be until Until then, I just won't stop. No.
Hey everybody, this week's episode of Brome is brought to you by Joe DeMeo Loans.com. JoeDimeoLoans.com. That's my website. If you guys are in the market for a home loan, please give me a crack at it. Hopefully I can get you a good rate, help you get into a home, and also, how fun would it be if you got one of your favorite podcast hosts to give you a loan? I think that would be hilarious, don't you, Ben? He's nodding with vehement agreement. Thank you guys. JoeDeMeoLoans.com. Hopefully I can help you all get into a home at some point. Thank you guys for tuning in. I appreciate your ears, and thank you for checking out the show. Thank you to Black Bulb Creative for being a sponsor of this show. If you guys like the branding or the logo for this podcast, please reach out to Black Bulb Creative. They're super talented dudes based out of Portland, Oregon. We love working with them, and they will get back to you promptly. That is blackbulbcreative.com. Thank you guys again for your support.